Walk into any garden center in America right now and you'll spend $50, maybe $100 before you even get to the seed rack. Fertilizer, pesticides, soil amendments, raised bed kits, irrigation setups. The average backyard gardener in this country spends over $300 a season trying to get a decent harvest. And half of them still walk away disappointed. In August, wondering what went wrong. Meanwhile, in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Amish families are pulling vegetables out of the same plots their great-great-grandparents worked 2 centuries ago. No synthetic fertilizers, no expensive soil conditioners, no drip irrigation systems, just deep, dark, thriving soil that produces year after year, and a technique so simple it takes about an afternoon to set up and costs you absolutely nothing. That method is called deep mulch gardening. Some people call it lasagna composting, or sheet mulching, or the no-till method. The Amish don't call it anything fancy. They just call it how they've always done it. And once you understand the science behind why it works, you're going to look at your garden and your garden store receipts very differently. Let's talk about why most gardens fail first, because that part matters. Here's what happens to the average gardener every spring. You dig up your plot, you buy a bag of garden soil or compost, you mix it in, you plant your seeds or starts, and things look pretty good for a few weeks. Then July hits. The soil dries out and cracks. Weeds explode. Your plants look stressed. You start watering more, spending more, maybe adding a fertilizer here and there, and you're basically on a treadmill you can't get off. The reason this cycle keeps repeating comes down to one thing. Bare soil is sick soil. When you leave soil exposed to the sun and rain, you destroy the microscopic ecosystem that makes it productive. Every time you till, every time you dig and turn and disrupt, you're essentially resetting the clock on years of soil biology that took nature a long time to build. Commercial farming figured this out decades ago and still largely ignores it because soil amendments and fertilizers are a profitable business. But small-scale gardeners don't have to play that game. The Amish understood this before the word soil microbiome existed. They learned it by watching, by farming the same land generation after generation and noticing what worked and what didn't. They watched what happened under a fallen tree after a few years, that deep, dark, loose, impossibly fertile layer of material underneath. And they figured out how to recreate it on purpose, on a schedule, in their gardens. Here's what deep mulch gardening actually is. It's the practice of layering organic materials, carbon-rich browns and nitrogen-rich greens, directly on top of your soil in thick, deliberate layers. You're building a system that mimics what the forest floor does naturally, but you're doing it intentionally so your garden gets the benefit. The layers break down slowly over time, feeding soil organisms, suppressing weeds, holding moisture, and continuously building the richest possible growing medium right where your plants need it. This sounds almost too straightforward. That's because it is, but let me show you the science underneath it so you really understand what you're setting in motion. Because this isn't magic, it's biology. Your soil is alive. A single handful of healthy garden soil contains more living organisms than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, nematodes, protozoa, earthworms, a whole invisible civilization doing one thing, converting organic matter into plant-available nutrients. When you feed that civilization consistently with layers of organic material, it thrives and multiplies. When you leave soil bare and exposed, it starves, dries out, and collapses. Think of the mulch layers as the cafeteria for everything living in your soil. Keep the cafeteria stocked, and the soil feeds your plants. Empty the cafeteria, and you're left doing all the feeding yourself, which is exactly what you're paying for when you buy fertilizer. The moisture retention side of this is just as important. Bare soil in summer can lose up to 2 inches of moisture per week to evaporation. A deep mulch layer, we're talking 6 to 8 inches, acts like a blanket. It keeps the soil temperature stable, slows evaporation dramatically, and means you might be watering once a week where you used to water every other day. That's not a small thing in a dry summer. That's the difference between a garden that thrives and one that barely survives. And the weeds. Oh, the weeds. A thick mulch layer blocks light from reaching the soil surface, which means weed seeds sitting in your top layer can't germinate. You're not fighting weeds with this method. You're preventing them from showing up in the first place. Amish gardeners aren't out there hoeing for hours every week. That time gets spent harvesting instead. Now let's get practical. Here's exactly how you build this, from scratch, on ground you might be starting with for the first time. First, choose your location. You don't need to till it. You don't need to prepare the soil at all. One of the most powerful things about this method is that you can build directly on top of grass, on top of weeds, on top of compacted ground. The layers you're about to add will smother what's underneath and begin transforming it. Start with a thick layer of cardboard. Overlap the edges by at least 6 inches so nothing sneaks through the gaps. Get it from appliance stores, grocery stores, hardware stores, anywhere that has boxes. Wet it down thoroughly once it's laid. This cardboard layer is doing two things. It's killing off whatever's underneath by blocking light and air, and it's providing a massive carbon feeding for earthworms and soil organisms who will begin pulling it apart almost immediately. You can feel good about this step because you're diverting cardboard from the landfill while building your garden. On top of that cardboard, you're going to build alternating layers of browns and greens. Browns are carbon-rich materials: straw, dried leaves, wood chips, shredded paper, sawdust. Greens are nitrogen-rich materials: grass clippings, kitchen scraps, fresh garden trimmings, coffee grounds, manure if you have access to it. The ratio you're aiming for is roughly 3 parts brown to 1 part green. You don't need to be precise about this. Ballpark is fine. Build your layers until you have a pile that's somewhere between 8 and 12 inches deep. It will look enormous at first. By spring planting time, it will have settled and compressed to about half that height, and what remains will be rich, dark, workable material your plants will absolutely love. For immediate planting, if you want to use this bed in the same season you build it, add a layer of finished compost or topsoil as your final top layer, about 3 to 4 inches deep. Plant directly into that layer. Your roots will find their way down through the decomposing material beneath it, and by next season, the whole bed will be transformed. The materials you need are almost certainly available to you for free right now. Leaves from your yard, cardboard from any store, grass clippings, kitchen scraps, vegetable peels, coffee grounds, eggshells. If you want to accelerate the process, add a layer of chicken manure or well-aged manure from a local farm. Many farms give it away if you're willing to pick it up. Straw bales from farm supply stores run about $5 each, and one bale covers a significant amount of ground. Timeline expectations matter here. If you build this in fall, you will have a completely transformed, ready-to-plant bed by spring. If you build in spring and add that compost cap layer, you can plant within days, and the bed improves through the entire growing season. Most gardeners who switch to this method report noticeably better yields in their first year. Healthier plants, fewer pest problems, dramatically less watering, almost no weeding. By year 2, the soil in these beds is something you have to see to believe. Dark, loose, full of earthworms, smelling like a forest floor. The kind of soil professional growers charge a premium to create. And this is where it gets interesting for people with challenging growing conditions. If you have heavy clay soil, this method works. The layers add structure and organic matter that clay soil desperately needs. If you have sandy soil that doesn't hold water, the deep, organic layer transforms its water retention completely. If you've had nutrient-depleted soil from years of conventional gardening, you're rebuilding the entire ecosystem from the ground up rather than trying to patch it with products. A few things to watch out for as you build. Don't use glossy or colored cardboard. It can contain inks you don't want in your food garden. Don't add meat scraps, cooked food, or dairy to your layers. Stick to raw plant material to avoid attracting pests. If you're using wood chips, aged chips work better than fresh ones, which can temporarily tie up nitrogen as they break down. And if you're building over an area with persistent perennial weeds like bindweed or creeping grass, go thicker on your cardboard layer. 2 layers overlapping is not overkill in those cases. Once you have one bed running, expanding is almost effortless. Every fall, add another 3 to 4 inches of material on top. That's your annual feeding, your weed suppression, your moisture management, all in one step. You're not buying anything. You're not tilling. You're not amending. You're just layering the way the forest does, the way the Amish have done for 200 years. Think about what that means over a decade of gardening. The conventional gardener spends $300 a year, tills every spring, fights the same weeds and the same drought stress and the same soil problems season after season, and starts essentially from scratch each year. The deep mulch gardener spends maybe $15 on a straw bale, spends an afternoon in October layering materials, and goes into spring with soil that's richer than it was the year before. Every year, better than the last. That's not a small difference in outcome. That's a fundamentally different relationship with your land. There's something worth sitting with here. This knowledge isn't rare or secret. It's been practiced continuously by traditional farming communities for generations. Indigenous farmers, European peasant communities, Asian subsistence farmers, variations of this layered organic approach show up across cultures that had no contact with each other because it works with how soil actually functions. We moved away from it not because something better was discovered, but because products are more profitable than practices. The knowledge didn't disappear. It just got buried under a century of advertising. The Amish kept it because they never had reason to abandon it. Their farms aren't certified organic operations optimizing for marketing labels. They're just families growing food the way families grew food before growing food became a retail industry. And when you walk through those gardens, the density of what's growing, the color of it, the health of those plants, you understand immediately that something is working that most modern gardens never achieve. You can bring that to your backyard. Today, this week, this fall, it doesn't require acreage. A 4x8 raised bed built this way will outperform a conventionally managed 20x20 plot. A small urban garden built on deep mulch principles will produce more food per square foot than most people think is possible. So here's your first step, and make it simple. Today, find 3 things: a source of cardboard, a source of dry leaves or straw, and a source of fresh green material. Even kitchen scraps work to start. You don't need all your materials at once. Start laying. Add to it as you gather more. There's no wrong way to do this as long as you keep the layers going. If you start this week, you have a bed in progress before the season ends. You go into next spring with ground that's been quietly working all winter. Earthworms pulling those layers down, fungi threading through the material, bacteria transforming raw matter into the most nutrient-dense planting medium you've ever worked with. That's what 200 years of Amish gardening figured out. Not a product, not a system you have to buy into, just a practice, passed down, that works because it works with nature instead of trying to override it. If this is the kind of practical, time-tested growing knowledge you want more of, subscribe, so you don't miss what's coming next. I'm going deep on traditional methods that are simple, proven, and completely free to implement. And drop a comment below. Are you building your first deep mulch bed this fall, or adding to one you already have? I read everyone. They can sell you a bag of fertilizer, but they can't sell you 2 centuries of accumulated wisdom. That's yours now. Use it.